Next subject, data views. So most of what you see in the IDE are implemented using data views. Yeah, the grids, the trees, tab strips, input controls, it's all data views. Now, people that know the version 9 form component, they are very well aware that you cannot implement this using the regular form component. These are not native window controls. No. We've chosen to go with HTML, so we had introduced a new component type. We've implemented a new component type, and that's the HTML component, the HTML form. It's going to be new in version 10, and all data views are implemented using the HTML form. So what is an HTML form? Basically, it's a mixture of forms with DSP component. So it shares from the form, it shares the window, the caption, all the window properties basically. So it can be contained, it can be secondary, it can be a pop-up form, it can be a tab form, all these kind of stuff. Yeah. So the outside of a HTML form is the same as from as with a form component. It's the inside of a form, of an HTML form, that is different. Yeah, we have replaced what we call the paint canvas with an HTML canvas. That means basically that we don't use any native window widgets. No, instead we use HTML widgets. Yeah, and from a development point of view, where we develop normal form components with the paint tableau, like in version 9, we're going to develop the layout of an HTML form using an HTML editor, like with DSP components. So the way you would edit a form versus an HTML form is that for a form we would use the paint tableau. So this is a mock-up of the version 10 layout editor. We have designed here, or I have selected here the design layout tab, and obviously this is a mock-up because we don't have this layout editor just yet. But it would look, you would recognize here the paint tableau as that we would have in version 9, whereas in version 10 for HTML forms we will introduce an HTML editor. Yeah, so here you see HTML source code, maybe an HTML preview and some HTML navigation. So the parts at the left and the right of the two are the same. Yeah, those are the shared. It's just the layout that differs. HTML editor, paint canvas editor. So the HTML form shares the whole HTML part with DSPs. So it has, like the DSP, it has a presentation logic split with an ID-based binding style, making sure that the HTML still is always well-formed HTML. Yeah, it does not use the X-stack based binding style like with the static server pages. Yeah, it even shares big parts of the JavaScript runtime. Yeah, the whole part of showing the HTML and handling the binding with the Uniface backend, that's our custom JavaScript runtime, and most of that JavaScript is shared with the dynamic server pages. So everything that we implement for HTML forms will eventually also be available for dynamic server pages and the other way around. But because it's still a form meant for a desktop application, it is connected and stateful. Yeah, it's like running a dynamic server page in an HTML widget, and we have an implicit web save web load. Yeah, so there's a very short communication between the front end and the back end, and it's all running within the same process, the same executable. It's even the case that the DSP shares the same rendering engine as the HTML widget. So you could consider whereas the HTML widget is a field level widget, you could consider the HTML form as being a component level widget, a component level HTML widget. So it uses, because it's HTML, it will have HTML controls. And the intention is to have a transparent control set, meaning that all the widgets that are, or all the controls that are supported by the rendering engines, so that's basically all the HTML5 control set will be available in HTML forms as well. Yeah, and I can tell you that the HTML5 control set is getting richer every day. There are date pickers, address bars, search boxes, auto-completion, URL bars, color pickers. I mean, it's a huge set. And for HTML forms, we're gonna support them. We're gonna support all of them. Basically, we're gonna do the same for dynamic server pages as well. And then on top of the HTML5 control set, we will add our own a couple of our own widgets, which for example is the attributes only widget, and we also have that in the dynamic server pages. So for the people that know the dynamic server pages and have used the attributes only widget, it's a very powerful widget. It allows you to bind any part of your layout to Uniface so that you can start dynamically manipulating that layout by setting HTML attributes like classes or inline styles or whatever, and you can also fire triggers on any HTML element in your layout, and those will then fire triggers in Uniface so you can hook up your 4GL procode to it. Then we have a couple of a static text and a raw HTML control. We will have a picture widget, and a picture widget allows us, of course, to show glyphs and binary image data that's in your database. In version 10, we're only basically using the attributes only widget, and using that widget, I have created a whole custom set of widgets specifically for the IDE. So what you see here are not out-of-the-box HTML5 widgets or some sort. No, I needed more flexibility, and I wanted to have full control on the visuals of our own of the IDE tool, and therefore we designed our own set of widgets, and they're all basically designed in HTML with CSS and 4GL code. So there's no JavaScript. It's not a JavaScript library or something that was plugged in. This is all done in 4GL in combination with HTML. So it's a very lightweighted set. That was really important because the user interface is so data heavy. It needed to be a very lightweighted set. So they're actually not really controls. They're only static pieces of information that look like widgets. Yeah. So they look like a combo box, a tab strip, a button or an edit box, or a grid cell or a column header or whatever. But actually it is just static text with some visuals around it, like borders and an icon here and there, and you can click on it. Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's static text with some clickable areas. Yeah. So this is, although this looks like a tab strip, and this looks like a series of buttons, this looks like a kind of combo box, it is not. It's just a couple of text with some lines and some clickable areas built in HTML. All the repetition is done using occurrences, so we didn't use any val reps because we don't use any native widgets, so we don't have the availability of val reps. So the repetition of tab strips, it's not defined in val reps, it's just an occurrence. So every tab button that you see is one occurrence, and we just create multiple occurrences if we needed more tabs in the tab strip. Yeah, this created a very lightweighted user interface. Even the pop-ups and the drop-downs are built using HTML forms. They are separate HTML forms. So they're not implicitly part of the widget. For example, if you look here to this screenshot here, this thing looks like a drop-down box, and this thing looks like its drop-down window that is part of this widget. It is actually not. It's separate. This is a separate piece of text with a clickable area that gives the impression that if you click it, some drop-down will open. And actually that is all built in 4GL, and indeed what happens is that a separate HTML form is started, exactly positioned below its original placeholder, and therefore giving you the impression that you're dealing with a combo box. But from a Uniface point of view, from an implementation point of view, this is separate and very lightweighted. This is a separate form component which is completely started on demand. So it's not available as part of the definition of this widget in its folder like regular drop-down lists or combo boxes is the case. Now it's a separate form component. It started on demand, so this thing has no knowledge of what is shown in here, making this part very lightweighted, and only this part will be invoked the moment the user requests for it. Yeah. 9 of the 10 times you look at a whole bunch of drop-down boxes, but the user eventually only uses one. Yeah, so why bother populating all those widgets with all that information if most of the time the user does not use it anyway? Yeah, so it's started on demand. This is a form component, so it allows us to use the same things that we did with the whole containment approach. Yeah, we can reuse parts, components for different kinds of drop downs, even different kinds of different types of pop-up. Yeah, I will show you a couple of examples of those in a minute. There's no, as I said, no proactive distribution of information, and that allows us to make this really lightweight and therefore snappy. Yeah, it will have a fast response. That is a component. It gives us the ultimate flexibility. Yeah, we can design the layout of the drop down itself because it is just a component. Yeah, so it allows us for fancy layouts. Yeah, it allows us for nested tabs, cascading drop down boxes, edit boxes, etc. What you see here, this is a drop down, but this drop down itself has a tab strip and radio buttons and an input control. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and it's just a matter, you can build anything that you need. Now, this kind of drop-down construction is already also available in version 9, although you don't do it with HTML forms, but normal forms. We have this new way, this new window property, that's the pop-up property, and you can basically make any form behave as a pop-up form. And then using its attach attribute, you can attach it to another window. So this pop-up and started on demand construction you can already do in version 9. So a couple of examples of pop-ups that we currently have in the IDE, and we're making a lot more of those, but we have a couple already. We have a very basic value picker, drop-down list. Yeah, so here we allow you to select a data type, but already you can see that this one is different than from a normal drop-down list because it has actually 2 columns that represent the representation. Yeah. We have another one here. Here you see something similar. It only has 2 values. Also we have, for example, a drop-down box over here. So not using this button, which is the normal place that starts the drop down of a combo box, we can also have some other clickable area that starts a drop down. Yeah, this allows us to pick the component type and from there select the component for editing. Yeah, we can also click this thing here and we can navigate even further. So here we see the component entities, etc, etc, etc. We have same navigation over here. Yeah, so we have a menu over here. It does not do much, but this is the intention that we're going to do a drop down menus. Yeah, we even already have context menus. Yeah, we don't have them hooked up on the right key yet, so there's this little temporary thing here, but that will go away. But for now, it will start a context menu. So this is the context menu. We can have a context menu over here, which is a bit bigger. If I select something over here, I can have a context menu over here. You can see that we can have a kind of indentation and headers kind of markup in context menu. So you can see that we have a lot of more flexibility if now we can design our own pop-ups. Yeah, and basically everything what you see is a pop-up, whether it's a drop down, a context menu, a navigation from the U-bar, it's all a pop-up form. Yeah, something that you can do in version 9 already, and we do the same thing, but then using HTML form, giving us even more flexibility in designing the layouts. It's even that so much the case that having a look again at this context menu, yeah, although it looks very simple, maybe you already recognize bits of it. This is again the same component as that is used over here. Yeah, it's a grid with 2 columns, no indentation, so therefore it looks very simple, but it is the same component as here. We hide the header, yeah, but it is again the same component. So we are even reusing components that we use for containment. We are reusing them for drop downs as well. This is just the tree grid, the same component as this one. Yeah, it's all the same component. So reuse is really optimal because we have very small isolated pieces of functional form components. Great stuff. So the next part is then text entry.